Okay, do you hear me? Yes? Very nice. So, welcome everybody. It's, not every day the Jewish community here in Nashville gets the opportunity to interview the chief rabbi of Uganda. And the truth is that, in just a moment I will ask Rabbi Gershom a few questions, but there is something very neat about how small the Jewish world is. I can say that I am here in Nashville in part thanks to a woman that used to work for an organization that brought us together like 14 years ago to the city of San Francisco. Because, the ways of God are very unique and mysterious. And so we both took part of a conference in San Francisco. I was representing the Jews of Latin America, whatever that means. And Rabbi Gershom was representing the Jews in Africa. And there were other folks, and we took part of a couple of panels together. And among, the three, we were the two of us, and then Rabbi Brad Artson, who was the rabbi where Rabbi Gershom went to school, and the rabbi that came for my, installation here in town. And so the rabbi that was organizing this encounter in San Francisco eventually told me, this congregation in Nashville is looking for a rabbi, you have to apply there. Well, 12 years after, I'm here. So it's very nice. And all of this to say that it's great that our paths are crossing once again. And in this opportunity, we get to welcome you, Rabbi, to Nashville, to Music City. And the way we are going to do this is I will ask Rabbi a few questions. And then I will open for your questions. And then there will be opportunities for more questions and dialogue and stories by the time we go to eat lunch. Okay? Sounds good? Okay, let's jump to this because Ayom Katzar v'melacha meruba. The day is short and the work is plentiful. So, Rabbi, tell us a little bit about the story of your community, about the story of the Abayudaya. Is that correct?
Yes.
Very good. So, what's the story? What's the scoop?
Thank you so much, Rabbi. And before I start, I want to thank my hosts, the Melchers, Adam and Temio, for the wonderful experience in Nashville for the first time. I am the chief rabbi of Abayudaya, which is a Luganda word for the people of Judah. So Abayudaya, Judah. And it doesn't refer to me, it refers alone, it refers to all of us in this house. We are all called Abayudaya in Uganda, which is the language that we speak in Uganda. We speak many languages, but Uganda is the biggest local traditional language. And so Abayudaya started in 1919 when Semeika Kunguru, our founding father, read from the Bible and discovered Judaism. Reading from the story of Abraham, he was inspired by Abraham's act of circumcising himself and his family as a pathway to Judaism. So he did the same. He taught the same to members of our tribe. And by the end of 1919, the Abayudaya movement had started with more than 8,000 people. They observed the laws of Torah exactly and directly from the Torah without any rabbinic interpretation because they had no access to the rabbinic tradition then. And so they observed Shabbat, the laws of Kashrut, the festivals, and all practices were extracted directly from the Bible. They did not have rabbinic interpretation, but they had their own interpretation. For instance, the law for Shabbat says, Kol melacha lo ta'aseh, or lo ta'asu. You shall not do any work on Shabbat. But then you have to define what work is. Because you shall not do any work. Work is misleading. Melacha is explained in the Mishnah and Talmud. So they had their own interpretation that melacha or work that is forbidden on Shabbat is anything that you use your hands to do. So if you performed using your feet, then that is not considered melacha. So that's how they started. They also had sacrifices because, for instance, on Pesach, the Seder is rabbinic. While in the Torah, it says you shall offer an offering. You shall make an offering on the 14th day of Nisan. So that's what they did. They also removed the shoes on entry into the synagogue because of what happened at the burning bush when God says, take off your shoes because the ground you are standing on is a holy ground. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on the history. That's how the community started in 1919.
And what about, it's like from that time and until now, how that has changed over the time when, you come into the picture and you decide to become a rabbi? How did that come about? And was there any change in the way the community practices Judaism in the last 10, 15 years?
Wonderful. So there was a transition from biblical Judaism to rabbinic Judaism. And this transition took long. It started in the 1960s when the Israeli embassy opened in Kampala. And the Israelis were told about the presence of a local Ugandan Jewish community. So the ambassador and his team chose to visit on Passover. On the evening of Passover, of course, the Seder is on the 14th. And you can now guess what happened. An encounter between people who are rabbinic and those who are biblical. The rabbinic group from the embassy brought with them boxes of matzah and wine, okay? While the biblical group was busy preparing for the Paschal sacrifice. So there was a standoff, a brief standoff, and each one was wondering if the other was Jewish enough, okay? And our group was wondering, how can you be Jewish and not know that the law says on the evening of the 14th of Nisan, you have to make a sacrifice. And that was explained by the embassy, that after the destruction of the temple, Jewish people no longer made sacrifices.
So you say that Jews are fighting with Jews about what Judaism is?
Fight, yes.
Okay, happens.
Exactly.
Okay, so the ambassador told you all that, so how that,
Exactly. And so the transition began, that the embassy began to connect our community to synagogues in Israel and to a yeshiva. There was an Orthodox yeshiva that accepted 2 younger people from our community to go to Israel and learn and become Orthodox rabbis. Then they would bring back rabbinic Judaism. But unfortunately, that didn't take place because of Idi Amin Dada. Mm-hmm. So if you remember Idi Amin Dada, and I don't know if you have a question about Idi Amin, I can skip.
No. Don't skip. I can adjust on the fly. So go ahead.
So Idi Amin Dada came to power by a coup d'etat in 1971. And he forbade Judaism and outlawed Jewish practice. So the 2 young people did not go to yeshiva because then Judaism was forbidden, and Idi Amin ruled for 9 years from 1971 to 1979. And you remember what happened during Idi Amin's time. 1976, Palestinian terrorists hijacked a plane and took Jewish people hostage, released the non-Jewish people. And the hostages were were taken captive at Entebbe Airport, which is our airport. And you remember that Yoni Netanyahu, may he rest in peace, led a commando force of Israel paratroopers who flew all the way from Israel undetected, landed at Entebbe, carried out a successful rescue of the hostages, but he lost his life, Yoni Netanyahu. And so that coincidence of Jewish haters coming together, the Palestinians taking Jewish people hostage, and Idi Amin forbidding and outlawing Judaism in Uganda. So that was a statement to us that God's eye was on Uganda, and we hoped for deliverance. And that deliverance, which usually comes on Pesach, you know why we drink 4 cups of wine? Because the Torah talks about deliverance in 4 ways. And so we saw that deliverance in 1979 because Idi Amin was overthrown on Pesach. So deliverance that talks about drinking 4 cups of wine came on Pesach. It was my first time as a child to go to synagogue, because the entire period of Idi Amin, and that was the time when I was born and I grew up during that time, we were not allowed to wear kippot or practice any form of public Judaism. We only prayed from our bedrooms. And I remember my father would say, God help us get rid of Idi Amin. And it came on Passover. And first time in the synagogue with about 300 people at the Seder, because now we had begun to observe the Seder. The transition from biblical Judaism had already started. And at the Seder, they drank more than 4 cups of wine because the deliverance in Egypt, now we added the deliverance of the defeat of Idi Amin. And the alcohol is 80% proof, banana wine. We make wine from bananas, and it's very tough. So you can imagine a room with people taking more than 4 cups of that. It was the first time I saw my people so happy, and I was very, very inspired by that incident, that as a child, I whispered to my grandfather, who was a rabbi, and my father was also a rabbi of the community, leaders of the community. And I said, you know what, I'm going to be the next rabbi. So that impressed them so much, they were already happy. They announced me as a next rabbi at the age of 9 in 1979. And they gave me a name. They said, now you are called Rabbi Gershom. So if you call me Rabbi Gershom, it is my name. Actually, it is on my passport, on my academic documents, on my driver's permit, because that was my name. So I grew up being called Rabbi. Be careful what you call your children and grandchildren, because actually that's what they might become. So, and that is how I began to view myself as a rabbi, because if my grandfather, my father, and other people call me rabbi, and it became an obligation for me to exact that. And the whole nation where we met was where God worked those wonders, as you opened your statements with, that God works in wonderful ways. So in one of the conferences where we met, Dr. Gareth Tobin, may he rest in peace, asked, and he was the first person to ask this question, how can I help you? And I saw that the dream to become a rabbi was coming true. So I said, I am called Rabbi Gershom, but I'm not a rabbi yet. Can I go to rabbinic school and train? He said, sure. I am going to call the Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies, where Rabbi Addison was. So he called Rabbi Addison, and a meeting was arranged. I was in San Francisco, so I flew down to Los Angeles to the UJ, University of Judaism then. It's now called the American Jewish University. and we had an interview with Rabbi Adson, and they were expecting a black student from Uganda for the first time in the rabbinic school, and he said, let me consult, and we will see what happens. After I consulted, I was given a green light to come and study in a rabbinic school. I had not been to a yeshiva anywhere. I was extracted directly from the villages of Uganda, where Adam and Tenio visited, where there's no electricity or running water. And I was extracted there to come. So they organized for me an ulpan for 3 months, and it was not only me, but other students who had no yeshiva background. So we learned the Hebrew, we learned the biblical Hebrew, introduction to Mishnah and Talmud, before they prepared us to start rabbinic school. And going to Los Angeles from those villages that you might be seeing, some of you on the pictures here, was like going to heaven. You know, from where there's no running water to Bel Air in Los Angeles. And in an apartment where the kitchen is in the house. We have kitchens outside because we use firewood. So if you put kitchen in the house, the whole house will be smoke. And in a place where the well is in the house, you don't have to walk 2 miles to get water back and forth. In a place where you could cook food in 30 minutes or in 30 seconds if you use the microwave. All this was, we thought we were in heaven. And my children, I had 2 children then, Igal and Daphna. Daphna was 7, Igal was 9. So while they were orienting us, telling us how to use the oven, how to use the fridge, the microwave, my children were being taught how to have a shower. And in the shower, all you have to say is, let there be warm water. And it will be flowing over you. It was, and the house is very clean like here. Ours don't have the floor, you know. It is like a dirty floor. We sweep, we don't mop, we do sweep. And my wife was amazed by the dishwasher. Because she cooks for many people at the synagogue, and you have to wash piece by piece of a plate. Even the washing machine for clothes, you have to pick ones and then dry. In the US, in Bel Air, all these were miraculous. You put things in a machine, you press a button, and things will begin to roll, and you can do other things. So it was moving from Africa to heaven, and then 2008 moving back was the most difficult. Now we are going to moving back to hell, where you can die of malaria. You get it? Where you have to die of malaria and typhoid. And we had lost 3 family members during our time in a rabbinic school. 3 family members died, and we were not at the funeral because we were in Los Angeles. And people were crying the night before we had to leave Los Angeles. My children were so mad at me. Why are we going back? We should stay. And my wife was saying, can we take a dishwasher with us? And these are true stories. We had packed so many bags, and then we realized we had a weight limit. So now we had to go onto the weighing machine, remove certain things, and the kids wanted everything. So it was a nightmare that night going back to Uganda. But Dr. Garrett Tobin, may he rest in peace, had prepared our safe landing. We had raised funds for mosquito nets that we distributed not only to the Jewish people, but to everybody, Christians, Muslims, because mosquitoes don't discriminate when they bite. We don't discriminate. The whole nation had raised the money to drill wells for clean water, which would help everybody, Muslims, Christians, Jews, in the same way. And above all, he had raised money to build a clinic where we would treat people who had malaria and typhoid. Unfortunately, Dr. Garrett Tobin passed away a year before we opened the clinic in 2010. And so we named that clinic the Tobin Health Center. Since its opening in 2010, nobody has died of malaria or typhoid in our community. And you can see how amazing coming to America can be. I am going and probably you stop me because
it's fine.
I'm not answering.
I think that people are engaged, so it's good.
So this is a journey of transition from biblical Judaism to rabbinic Judaism, but it's also a transition from a difficult life to some life that is now better, that people can now have access to some health. And there are many other challenges that are still going on, but that transition is still going on, because the reason I come to the US is to find good people like Garrett Tobin, who not only brings back Torah to Uganda, but also brings back sustenance, because it says, Ein Torah, Ein Kemach, Ein Kemach, Ein Torah. Those two go together. Where there is no sustenance, there is no Torah. And where there is no Torah, there cannot be sustenance. And we look at you, the people of the United States and the United States, as our angels. You know, angels are people. In the Torah, God says that Ish, you know, when Ish means man, and many times angels are referred to as Ish. So I can refer to you as angels because in your small way of support for our community, we have achieved a lot, and that can be considered, that makes you be considered the angels. And we can also be angels. I can be an angel too. You know, every human being can angel. I am an angel to somebody, and you are angels to somebody. So the transition was not only a rabbinic, but biblical rabbinic transition, as also a welfare transition.
Nice. Now, it's like today, how is the community organized? How many Jews are in Uganda? Where are they? It's like, do we have in Uganda Reform, Conservative, Orthodox? Those categories don't mean anything over there. How does the community work?
Wonderful. We actually, in the beginning, before the transition to rabbinic Judaism, our community was Abayudaya, without all those denominational differences. Then there was a rabbinic transition, and which saw a Bet Din of conservative rabbis. They came to Uganda in 2002 and carried out mass conversion for everybody. Many people resisted because they said, what are we converting to? We are already Jews. But the rabbinic tradition says that for anyone to be considered Jewish, they either are born by a Jewish mom or they are converted. So we did not fit those two categories until we converted. So I explained that to my people. There was conversion. Then an Orthodox rabbinic student, after hearing that the conservative Bet Din went to Uganda, he also took a Bet Din to Uganda and reconverted some of our people who were convinced that the best way to go was Orthodox. So there are two Orthodox synagogues as a result. And recently we had a younger woman, Shoshana, who went to rabbinic school at HUC, got ordained, and she's now an ordained rabbi, not in Uganda, but in San Francisco. She was given a job in San Francisco. But there are people in Uganda who are excited to receive her back, and therefore we might have a Reform synagogue also coming up. And I am happy with them. I am happy with all of them, and we have created a rabbinic union. The two rabbis from the Orthodox village and 8 rabbis from my conservative synagogues. We have 10 synagogues in total.
Wow.
And 2 are Orthodox, 8 are conservative. We all now work together. When there are life cycle events like a brit or wedding or bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, we all come together as a community. And that's how they made me a chief rabbi, because now the Orthodox, the Reform, everybody agreed that you, me, being the first to be ordained, I was ordained in 2008, and there was no African rabbi ever to be ordained in a yeshiva outside of sub-Saharan Africa. I would say sub-Saharan. There could be rabbis in South Africa or Morocco who are from Africa, but I am talking about sub-Saharan Africa. You are looking at the first ordained rabbi from sub-Saharan Africa, and who accepted to go back, because going back, I told you, is very, very challenging. And I have, my son-in-law is also in the rabbinic school in the US, but I'm not sure he will be able to go back. He might seek to stay. So that is how we are. We have 8 conservative synagogues, 2
Orthodox, and a Reform rabbi who
can come back.
For the time being is here in the US, but who knows?
And we have about 2,000 people, all the way from 300 that I mentioned after the fall of Idi Amin. The 300 that they said now we are about 2,000.
And all of them live in the same place, or it's all over the country?
It's all over. A big chunk lives in Mbale and the areas around Mbale, but we have a congregation coming up in Kampala. We have another congregation 250 kilometers away from Mbale, and another congregation in neighboring Kenya.
Wow.
But we also have other congregations coming up in Africa. And being the sub-Saharan African rabbi, I have led a bet deal to Nigeria. And we have converted more than 240 people. The unfortunate part is that Nigeria has not trained a rabbi. And part of our dream is that we shall start a yeshiva in Uganda to train rabbis for these African communities that are coming up. And I am a missionary rabbi, so maybe you join me, rabbi. So
anytime. Happy to go.
Convert most of Africa. There is a potential for big numbers on the continent of Africa.
Anytime.
Interest for Judaism on the continent of Africa is actually increasing.
Wow. Now let's talk a little bit about the, we spoke about the community, about the rabbis. Let's talk about the Jews. It's like, what people do for a living back home, how they find the way to be in the world, in Mbare mostly, but then in the rest of the country. Is there anything in particular?
Actually, the history of our economy is subsistence. We did not go into education and other economic activities because of the missionary activity. All schools and all economic institutions were run by Christian missionaries who used them as tools of converting people to Christianity and attracting people. So they had hospitals, schools, and businesses. For fear of conversion, our people remained subsistence farmers. And I can say 98, maybe 99% of our people are subsistence farmers, growing beans and maize, and depending on rain, like you have a lot of rain here, but now it's the opposite, is a drought in Uganda. So if there is a drought, then there is no food. So these communities suffer famine and hunger. And we also raise chickens. You can see chickens roaming the compound, free-range chickens, goats. For instance, if you want to take your child to school, you have to sell a number of goats. in order to get money for fees. Some people, the rich ones are the ones who have cows. If you have a big cow, then you have more money, because a big cow can cost about $500. So if you have one cow, you have like $500. If you have a goat, you have like between $50 to $80. If you have a chicken, maybe you have $5 to $10. So that's how our economy is right now. But we are also looking for a transition from that subsistence economy to some commercial economy. And we've started a microcredit program where people who have business orientation can borrow money at a cheaper price and then use that money to do their businesses or to expand their farming. Or they can buy young cows and grow them and sell them and get a profit. And that is a transition we are now looking for.
And so how are you going to make that? So you need to raise the funds so that you can borrow that to people?
Exactly. When I come to the US, the funds that I collect, if you give me a check for my being here, which is the wonderful thing with the US, in Uganda you speak and nobody gives you anything. Here I have spoken, I know there will be some money that goes to Uganda. That, together with whatever philanthropy rights, goes to that microcredit program to help our people transition from subsistence farming. Actually, the women in Uganda are making support like the one I'm wearing and like
this.
Adam. Hey, oh, you okay? So yeah, like this one, and the women also they are transitioning. So from farming, they go home and they sit down as they wait for the food. As the food is on the firewood, they are making some kipot, and they loaded me with some of them to bring. So we give them. The money goes to the women directly. Maybe 5% can be taken away to support microcredit program for others.
Nice.
Yes.
So I will ask the last question and then open it to our audience to ask as well. But it's like you not only are a rabbi who came here, went back, you're in charge of the community, but there was a moment when you also became a member of the parliament in Uganda, right?
Yes.
Because you had a lot of free time.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about how was that experience, in the world post Idi Amin, and the fact that from Judaism being absolutely forbidden to the fact that a Jew, a rabbi of the community, became a member of the parliament. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
And what you said is exactly almost the response, and is perfectly said by you. The reason I ran for parliament and the reason I have ambitions to become president of Uganda, in my little head, I think that I should be president of this country, is because of Idi Amin. That Idi Amin took Jewish people hostage, forbade Judaism. We suffered during that whole time. I thought that he misused political power. And when I see people misuse political power, especially to punish and make life difficult for minorities and for vulnerable people, I want to stand up, because that's what God does. When the Egyptians take Jewish people as slaves, what does God say? Let my people go, right? So what God does, what we should do. We have so many challenges in Uganda, and I thought that, no, I can't leave this world unshaken. So it was very, very difficult to become a member of parliament, because to become a member of parliament, you need to have a majority base. My base is the Jewish community, which is a minority base. So I represented an area of 250,000 people. most of whom were Muslims and Christians. But the reason I succeeded was when I went back from rabbinic school, I brought back the spirit of Tikkun Olam, which is the Jewish spirit, where when we gave out mosquito nets, you remember? I said, mosquitoes don't discriminate. In the line, I want to see everybody. Jews, Christians, Muslims, get the mosquito nets. We had 10,000 mosquito nets, and we had less than 2,000 Jewish people. So what are we going to do with the rest? Give them to our neighbors. The wells that we built from Bechor Lashon, we shared them with our non-Jewish neighbors. There was a well that was built by a mosque, Muslim mosque, and it was restricted to Muslims at the time of prayer. Our wells, we opened them up for everybody. And eventually, the mosque also opened up its well to everybody. So we began to preach Tikkun Olam not only to the Jewish people, but and the Tobin Health Center, which saves lives, does not only save lives for the people of our community, but to everybody. And I had promised my constituency, because they had no ambulance, 250 people without an ambulance. I said, when I go to Parliament, and they give me money to buy an SUV for a VIP, I'm not going to use that money to buy that. So I'm going to buy you an ambulance. And actually I did. And the ambulance is still there, saving lives, taking people to Kampala, to where. And that is how I succeeded in becoming a member of Parliament.
Beautiful.
And
Beautiful.
if I get good support, I can run for president.
There you go.
If there's somebody in the audience to say yes, I can go and run for president.
Then we will be able to say that we know the president of Uganda. So we will take a few questions here from the audience. Perhaps we'll take 3 now, and Rabbi will answer, and then some more until we get to time's up, and then we'll see. So Marsha, and Linda, and Steve.
We have a lot of Hadassah members here. What role does Hadassah play in Uganda?
Oh. Let's wait.
So that's one.
That's one. Linda.
Well, mine's I have several actually. It's very interesting. I assume that the Jewish population has grown immensely. You said you were ordained in 2008. I was in Uganda in 1995. And usually when we travel, we always look for Jewish populations. And we didn't, other than seeing Yonatan Netanyahu's airplane in Entebbe, we did not detect a Jewish presence there. Of course, we were not there for a Jewish reason. We were there for nature. But I was curious. I assume that the population has grown immensely. In 1995, all the people we met had been terribly impacted during the reign of Idi Amin, who went after and slaughtered all the intelligentsia, slaughtered the wildlife, and every resident of Uganda had suffered terribly. So it's interesting to hear you say that in the Jewish community he forbade the practice of Judaism. I'm curious how else the Jewish community was impacted in terms of, was there any violence, and had your people made Aliyah to Israel also? I know in Ethiopia there was a huge Aliyah movement, even on Operation Moses, taking people to Israel. And interestingly, in Ethiopia, when I was there, everyone thought they were Jewish. And coming down from Haile Selassie, that the history of the country in Ethiopia was that they were all Jewish. Is that the case in Uganda also?
Okay. And Steve.
This question is for both of you. After the conversion was done, are now the descendants of those people fully accepted as Jews by all determining Jewish authenticity.
Okay.
Okay, so we will start with the most current question because it overlaps with your question as well. The story of Abayudai is very difficult to believe until you experience and see. If you told somebody that there was a Jewish community in the heart of Africa, and it is a local Jewish community, some people might doubt. And that is what happens in Israel. When I was there for the rabbinic year, they wrote an article, and an official from the Misrad Hapnim, the interior ministry, said that there could be Jews in Uganda, but they are Jewish because of ulterior motives. They are converting because they know they want to come to Israel. And if we allow the Jews of Uganda to come to Israel, the whole of Africa will find a way of coming to Israel. So that statement was so offensive because our community did not start with that intention, because in 1919 there was no Israel to go to. So now I am saying that the people in Israel they don't know our history. They have not encountered me. They have not come to Uganda. So it is very easy for them to just do that. But recently we had a younger man from our community who decided to go to Israel and say, I want to make Aliyah. They wanted to deport him back to Uganda. He was assisted by our Masorti movement there. He went to the Supreme Court, filed his case, and he won, and he became a citizen of Israel. So we have one Abayudai member who is a citizen through struggle. But we need to educate our people in Israel. We need your voices as well to tell the people that there is a Jewish community in Uganda, so that they can come to terms with it. The other question was about Amin, how Amin impacted our community. He forbade Judaism, and the punishment for disobeying was death. Actually, one of our people was killed in 1976. He went to a local bar, drank the 80% alcohol proof I told you about, became intoxicated, and began to sing Jewish songs on his way back. And he was rounded up and killed in 1976. My dad, who was a rabbi, who enjoyed Sukkot, during Sukkot, he built a sukkah. He just wanted to build a sukkah. He felt good having a sukkah in the backyard. He thought that wouldn't catch the eye of the scouts. So one scout came and arrested him. He would have been shot dead had the scout not accepted. Had the scout not accepted the bribe, we gave a bribe to him, and he left my dad. So it was a time of fear, and many people left the community. So there were more than 2,000 before Idi Amin. After Idi Amin, there were only about 300. Had he lived for more than 10 or another 10 years, our community would be wiped out completely for people leaving and joining the Muslim or Christian communities for safety of their lives. And then the question about Hadassah. We have a school called Hadassah, but it is not supported by Hadassah. And we actually, when we created Hadassah Primary School, we didn't know that there was a Hadassah here in the US. We extracted it from Purim, the story of Purim, Esther, Hadassah. So Hadassah does not do anything. And I don't know if they know we have Hadassah Primary School in Uganda.
They do now.
Oh, so if we have Hadassah people here, please. Now you know that we have Hadassah Primary School. And if you can step up Our children are our future. The reason why we have Hadassah and also Semei Kapungu High School is to respond to the missionary, because the missionaries used their schools, they still use those schools as centers of conversion. We want our children to go to Jewish schools so that they can maintain their Judaism, so they can live within the Jewish environment.
Nice. Okay. We will go over there. 1, 2, 3. Okay, over there.
What was the main language that was taught in the primary schools in Uganda?
Very good question. The reason I speak English is because Uganda was colonized by the British in 1888. And the British made English the official language of Uganda, because there are so many languages that we speak, over 70 languages. Every tribe has their own language. So English became the union, the uniting factor. And so English is taught in schools, and it is the official language. But then the other big language is Luganda, because many people speak Luganda. But there are others who don't speak Luganda. So we also have Swahili. I speak 6 languages.
Which ones?
I speak Luganda, the one I'm speaking now, but I also speak Hebrew, if you know. Then I speak 3 other local languages, Swahili inclusive. Yeah.
So we have a lot of anti-Semitism in America. How do other people treat Jews in Uganda?
Very good. We have had times when we are called Christ killers. And even the word Abayudaya, if you introduce yourself as Abayudaya, the room full of non-Jews will laugh. You hear people say, hey. Why? Because for them, the word Abayudaya also refers to traitors. So we boldly, and one of the reasons I went to Parliament was to boldly tell them that I'm proud of being Abayudaya. So in Parliament, I had my kippah on. And some of the members of Parliament wanted to do anti-Semitism. For instance, one of them asked me, are you the Jews who killed Jesus? And my response was, is Jesus considered God? He said yes. And he said, so you think I am more powerful than your God? And then the rest shrank, and nobody asked me about that anymore. They all began to say, Shalom, Rabbi. So standing up to them is what we have done all these days, but there are people who are anti-Semitic. But then we have many Christians who are Christians for Israel. And after October 7th, the only demonstration that happened in Uganda was a demonstration by the Christians for Israel, demonstrating in support of Israel.
I have a little voice issue, so I apologize. I am the captain of the World Jewish Congress election here in the synagogue, and I want to ask you whether or not, I don't know how to ask this, Rabbi. We as a conservative synagogue are hoping to get people to vote in the World Jewish Congress election for the Merkaz platform. And I'm assuming that one of the reasons that I appreciate you being here is that I can see a direct link to the Merkaz movement's platform to helping you and helping your community, because we as a conservative and you as a Masorti congregation, we have the same values that we would like to help Israel understand. Does that make sense to you? Is there a way that you can describe why people might want to vote in this election, or should I ask that at all, Rabbi?
Yeah,
You already did it, so that's it.
I see. So,
It's, but I guess I would say that yes, among the many reasons why people should get involved and vote in the World Zionist Organization that is coming up is because that is the way the body of the Jewish people comes together and decides on how to use part of the funds allotted to that body. So those funds are given based on the amount or the number of votes that you get. So the more votes our way of seeing the world gets, that will mean more resources, for example, to help when a member of Rabbi Gershom's community tries to go to Israel and the interior minister tries to say, no, that is not a real Jew, it's not recognized or whatever. And again, at the end of the day, through the work that the Supreme Court of Justice is doing and through what, it was Andy, right? Zichron Livracha, what some of our rabbis in Israel are doing allows us to be more successful in crafting this type of understanding of what Judaism should be about. Okay? So last round of questions. Gay, you have one. Adam, you have one. And Tenil.
Financial support. So you mentioned the loan program. Sounds like $5 can buy a chicken, 50 a goat can change lives. Can you, after this, get information and details on how to either donate to our mitzvah fund, whether it's synagogue, and whether it's directed towards that, whether it's a loan and a gift, or other support to the Jewish community in general. And if he is Rabbi's already going back to Uganda, how that money is sent, and does the government somehow take a piece of it?
okay, very good. We have my rabbi and mentor. I interned at Shomer Torah Synagogue for all the time I was in rabbinic school. And Rabbi Kamras Richard has come to Uganda every time. Even recently he came to Offshet at my daughter's bat mitzvah. And so there is a fund at his synagogue for Abba Yudaya. And there is a QR code that we have. So if you donate, the funds go to Hamakom in LA, and then all of it is transferred to Uganda, and the government doesn't take anything from it. We have a non-profit for Abba Yudaya congregation in Uganda with a board, with the signatories, and the money is used specifically for what has been given. So that is there, and a website is on the way, constructed by my friend Adam and Tenil Melcha. They are doing a wonderful job of putting up a website and a fund and a non-profit organization, Friends of Abba Yudaya. And so maybe that also will help so that we have an independent run organization, a 501c organization here that is going to be collecting support on behalf of our entire community.
Okay. Adam, Tenil.
Well, I just wanted to share my experience. We were there for Hanukkah this past year, 2 months ago, and I didn't know what to expect. I've lived here in Nashville for 11 years, and we went there. My father and my mother are still members of the synagogue that he interned, and when we found out that they were going, I was looking at it more for that they aren't going to have many more years of travel, and I wanted to spend time with them. I didn't really think much about the Uganda part, so I didn't know really what to expect. I honestly thought that there was going to be, technical trucks trying to kidnap, people, and that there was going to be I didn't know what to expect, but I know that the very first night that we got there was the first night of Hanukkah. And we get out of the van, and there was a bunch of 3, 4, 5, 6-year-olds that are running up to us so happy. And the first thing that they're saying is Shabbat Shalom. And it was the last thing that I was expecting to hear. And that first night, you have a mixture of members of the Los Angeles Synagogue, which when I was living in Los Angeles, I remember him holding his daughter that we went to see his bat mitzvah. And to see him in Los Angeles and then not see him once we moved here and have a chance to see them in the different synagogues and how they lived, we came back and I felt compelled that we have to help them because, you know, I felt that growing up in a conservative synagogue, a lot of times I felt like I was going through the motions. You know, we don't read Hebrew, you know, a Siddur to know all the prayers. We oftentimes can just say them by heart. But there, they have the emotion that, you know, you see 500 Jews in a room for a bat mitzvah, and they're all singing the same songs that we sing, but they mix a little Lion King inside of it. It's just very inspiring to see them just so excited about being Jews. And so I said, I'll do whatever I can to help. And so we've been working with different rabbis around the country that have already been helping him to organize the stories and to be able to make it easy for anybody here or anybody to be able to find him and hear the story and see what he has that we have here. So I just wanted to share a little bit of my experience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the same as my husband. So we spent about 2.5 weeks in Africa. It was honestly life-changing. So real quick, can you talk a little bit about the Hadassah, the children there, the boarding school, how even though it is a Jewish private school, 80% are Christian and Muslim children that go there, and the Jewish population is still trying to take care of them, but how you'll see pictures in there that have you'll see the bunk beds. Well, that's at the primary boarding school, and there's no mattresses. These children sleep on the wire beds. So there's no mattresses, no pillows, you know, no blankets, things like that. And they only have enough money to feed the boarding children one meal a day is 1 cup of porridge. But $18 will feed 15 kids. So, like you're saying, $1 will feed one child for one meal. I mean, it's unbelievable. But so I guess you don't really need to talk about it as I just did. But if you can talk about your daughter's bat mitzvah that we went to and the gift that she was given from the entire community chipped in for her gift. And also if you can talk about your grandfather and the chickens.
Okay. So, very good. The need for our people is so big. And I didn't come here to talk about the needs of our people, but that is in the background. And, you know, knowing that if you support, your support goes very far. Like children sleeping on wires, but they need to go to school. My daughter's bat mitzvah was well attended, and she did well. Everybody was happy with her. And the community bought her a goat as a gift, so, you know.
You'll see her standing there in the picture holding her goat. She was so excited.
She was so excited. But unfortunately, the goat ate a plastic and it died. You know, they roam. We don't have like a farm. We have open fields where chickens and goats roam and eat. So maybe this particular plastic had salt on it, and when it got it, it tasted much better, and that's how she lost the goat. But about chickens, in Uganda, like any society in the past, women were denied rights, right? And you know, even the Torah, the daughters of Zelophehad had to come up and say, our father did not have male children, had only female children, so who is going to inherit? And God said, what they are saying is right. Let them inherit their father, even if they are what? Girls. So we have these instances where, like for instance, in Ugandan culture, women were not allowed to eat chicken. Reason? No reason. And so my grandfather had, how many daughters? 5 daughters. And they liked chicken. But their mom was saying, you can't eat chicken because you're what? A woman. So on one occasion when my grandfather was eating chicken, he gave a piece to one of the girls. And the other daughters also said, I also want to have chicken. And they began eating what? Chicken. So he was protesting against the majority Ugandan culture. The consequence of that is that a woman who eats chicken does not get married. So all the daughters were denied marriage. So they wouldn't go to marry. So what did he do? My grandfather was the chief rabbi, like I am now. And he had the other rabbis who were married, who had children. I said, what are we going to do now? He called his colleagues and said, you know what, you are going to marry my daughters. So all the daughters of my grandfather became second wives to these men so that they can have children. So I am a son. In my family, I have half brothers and sisters because my mom was a second wife to my father, and so were the others. But then, even if that was like that, people began to eat chicken. The women began to eat chicken. And now the entire country, starting at my grandfather's house, the whole country, women now are allowed to eat chicken, and there are more freedoms for women. And that's why I chose to go to conservative rabbinic school, so that women can lead services, can read from Torah, they can have all what men do. So that is a beginning of our, how do we call it, egalitarianism.
Very nice. So before we wrap up, it's like, you spoke about how the Orthodox, conservative, Reform rabbis in your community work together. In our city, it happens as well, which is very unusual, at least in the United States. And we want to give you a book that we put together in this city, in which every rabbi, from the very Reform to the very ultra-Orthodox, contributed, because it's part of the Torah that we want to take from here to the rest of the world. And we want to thank you very, very much. We will ask for everybody a round of applause, and Rabbi will stay for lunch, so for more conversation. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Rabbi? Thank you. Your feet. Yafe.
So I laughed because Richard's younger brother and I